as President Donald Trump and Elon Musk continue to use Doge to dismantle government overspending like USAID. The media goes into a frenzy, desperately trying to convince the public that frivolous spending was a good thing.
In Cambodia with a team that clears landmines and leftover explosives, but a freeze in U.S. foreign aid funding around the world could seriously upend progress. Cambodia is one of the most heavily contaminated landscapes on the planet, littered with tons of bombs,
after Vietnam,
bullets, and landmines, left over from years of brutal civil strife and a lot from U.S. bombing campaigns during the Vietnam War. The State Department has been a major backer of demining groups here. With American aid drying up in places like Cambodia, projects everywhere will depend on other countries to fill that funding gap, including China.
Oh no, China might have to spend their money on humanitarian aid on the continent that they share. How dare we expect them to contribute? We better immediately resume sending billions of dollars to minesweeping and underwater basket weaving, just so the Chinese can continue focusing on bolstering their navy. It's almost like these newscasters don't even listen to themselves, or even proofread what they're writing, as a caption over this clip is U.S. aid freeze.
Here's the issue, right, is that in a lot of cases, like, probably some of this is our fault, for sure. But the issue is, like, kind of what I was saying just, like, actually a little bit ago, where, like, you can't expect a bunch of people to, let me think of a way to say this. It's 100% our fault, right? Yeah, well, let's say it is. But, like, let's say you're 30, like, you're 34, like I'm 34. Do I want to have the generational accountability for something that I wasn't even alive during, that all my tax dollars have to go towards? Like, I'm sorry, but, like, no, not really, right? And so 24, I said 34. And so exactly, right? And so, like, I think that as people, as more people that are, like, weren't alive for this, get into the voting force, they're not really going to want to be accountable for something that happened when they weren't even alive.
Which is actually what they wanted you to think USAID.
It's kind of like what I was saying, the sins of our fathers. Yeah, exactly, right? And so I think that if you can't use that argument to a young person, I think to an older person, then maybe that could be effective. But I think especially to young audiences, it's just simply not anymore. It's not our sin. It's not our responsibility. Yeah, exactly.
Or aid to other countries, when it's really the United States Agency for International Development, meaning spreading liberal initiatives to third world countries that have zero of the cultural issues we have in America. But sure, help inject DEI programs into Burmese scholarships and LGBT initiatives in Cambodia.
One thing that I found very telling about this USAID is that there were people from these countries that didn't even know that it was happening. And I feel like that was probably more telling than anything, that if the entire intent of this is to create soft power in these countries, but the people that are in the countries don't even know that it's happening, what are the odds that this money just isn't really making itself, it's just really not making its way over to that group of people? That's what I think is happening. Because, yeah, how is this? It's money grabbing. Yeah, what is this? This is very interesting.
Behind the guise of sweeping landmines on the side. As I do understand, landmines are terrifying, but it's not like once the local residents stop receiving checks from the American taxpayer, they'll just shrug their shoulders and say, I guess I'll just let my kids' limbs get destroyed. No. They'll find a way to take care of the issue, or better yet, their local government can use their resources to take care of their issues. And this isn't me being callous to the fact that American tax dollars from half a century ago may have planted some of those.
Well, it's like, I mean, this guy's probably like somewhere around my age, right? I didn't do this. He didn't do this. We didn't do this. I don't want to pay for it. It's not our fault. Straight up. Right? Like, that's what it is. Fuck that.
Munitions. This is me having absolutely zero faith that if we continue to throw them billions of our dollars in an effort to eliminate their landmine issue, more than 99% of that cash is never actually going to go to protecting their people from landmines. As USAID is an aid, It's $29 million going to improve young Egyptian skills, $30 million for the LGBTI experience in the Caribbean, $4 million to fight internet trolls.
Bro, to fight. This is. There are. I bet there are people, you know, like that meme of like the really big fat guy with the water pipe, and then there's the little skinny guy trying to get like 1 or 2 drops. I think that the big fat guy is these different bureaucrats, and the skinny guy is the actual citizens. I bet probably like a very small fraction of this actually gets seen by the public and distributed in a way that's beneficial. I think that it's totally mismanaged, probably. We got to stop the spending. Yeah, exactly. And that's also like, you know, assuming that it's even a good idea in the first place.
In Kazakhstan, and even when we spend here locally, there was $59 million for hotels in New York City, but for the migrants. And remember, we covered the crisis in NYC at length, then discovered that we house migrants in the Roosevelt Hotel for millions, proposing an additional $220 million, all going to Pakistan, as Pakistan's government owns the Roosevelt Hotel in America, who is now being handsomely compensated to assist in the destruction of New York City. But as long as we label all this as aid and life-saving, the news media can prance around in the public's face, trying to shame us into continuing this obvious scam. As a politician,
I think that's what happens primarily, is that people put an emotional slant on this, and then they try to use that in order to make people afraid to push back against it. And I think that if you actually look at the numbers and see how it actually fits together, it wouldn't make as much sense. You're the first one to say that you don't choose where you spawn since you're in the US. You're guilty by proxy. That's life. Okay, well, I'm going to choose to not be guilty. I've decided that I'm not guilty anymore. Yeah, that's a great point. I'm going to put that point in the garbage, and I'm going to do what's in my best interest. So, yeah, no, I mean, I understand other people might think that, but that doesn't, yeah, that's it. And by the way, I think that that's the way a lot of people that are my age believe. How many of you guys around my age think the exact same thing? Like, I'm not going to try to hold, you know, like, and I feel like this is even true in a contemporary sense. Like, don't we all agree that it's outrageous and ridiculous to hold individual Chinese citizens accountable for what the CCP does? I think that's disgusting. And we saw that with COVID. The way that, you know, certain people that were Asian were treated during COVID was disgusting. And so even in cases where it's happening, you know, extemporaneously, it's still bad.
Politicians are now claiming eliminating fraud is unconstitutional.
You know, what is going on in this country, not only with education, but with other institutions, is the president is operating in a very authoritarian, illegal, and unconstitutional way.
Then other Democrat senators go on ABC to echo that same sentiment.
A constitutional crisis, grossly unconstitutional, pretty alarming language.
Yeah, listen, I think this is the most serious constitutional crisis the country has faced. Certainly since Watergate, the president is attempting to seize control of power and for corrupt purposes.
And now CNN parrots their talking points.
And tonight, there are warnings that the U.S. is dangerously close to
I think, wait, never mind, maybe not.
Constitutional crisis.
Then NPR, The Intercept, Fox News.
What happens if Trump starts ignoring court rulings? We break it down. Constitutional crisis looms. Democrats continue to panic over a constitutional crisis caused by Doge. I think what's ended up happening is that this has been like another like trained. I think the media has done a really great job at training people to not care about them. And I think a really good example of it is the Napoleon quote that Trump did yesterday. Is that, I mean, I'll be honest, as somebody, I've been very positive about Trump being president. I'd say about 90% of the things that he's done, I've agreed with, maybe a bit less, maybe a bit more, depending. But I don't think that I don't think that the Napoleon tweet was a good tweet. I don't think it was a good thing to say. But the problem is that when you constantly have this like highly elevated, super extreme language that's used all the time, when something problematic actually happens, people are going to be so desensitized to it that they're not even willing to listen. And I think that's what's that's what's happening. It's meant to be taken out of context. Well, all I'm saying is that that's the way I think a lot of people see it, right? And yeah, the Valentine's Day tweet. Well, I'm just saying in general.
The New York Times, Yahoo, MSNBC, AP, and basically everybody is echoing the so-called constitutional crisis we're currently facing. And there's a reason this meme took off, I think, in late 2020. First, it was 15 days to slow the curve. Then it was lockdowns and masks. Then it was get this.
It's the boy who cried wolf. Yeah, and I think that it's happened. It's happened in a lot of cases, and I feel like I think that it's just I don't know. Like I could come up with like 10 different examples. I've talked about this a lot, so I don't want to like kind of rehash it all the time. But like I just think that it's such a big problem nowadays that you have such extreme emotionally driven rhetoric that ends up causing people to work against their best interest in the long run. COVID woke a lot of people up. It did. And COVID, what I think COVID primarily did is that it got a lot of people to distrust the government. And I think that it caused them and it damaged the trust that they had in the government in a way that is, I think, irreparable in the next like 10 or 20 years. And the media.
Then support this war in Eastern Europe, then vote Kamala to save democracy, and now Doge is a constitutional crisis. If suddenly and all at once, every single news outlet all says the same exact line in the same exact way, it almost seems like we have a Chinese-style state-sponsored media. As interesting.
I feel the same way about that, by the way. This is the same thing I said about games media on a smaller scale, is that everybody was talking about how it was bad that only one company owned all of these other different media outlets. But if you could, I couldn't have told you the difference. Like, if I had read an article from any games publication, I could have assumed it was from any games publication. Because they basically all write the same, they sound the same, they have the same message, they even use the same terms like the return to form, etc. I think that it's insane.
Enough, we're finding a lot of news outlets received money directly from the government. Then those same news outlets are telling us to stop looking into government spending. Seems suspicious, especially when they basically championed Biden for notoriously not listening to the law.
Well, I think that it really, I feel like with the debate with Biden, I think that what that was really revealing for was the amount of complicit cover-up that a lot of media had done for Biden's cognitive decline. And I think that after it was made evident in the debate, it caused a lot of people to distrust the media because they could go back and look at all of the clips and all of the posts that had been made saying that, oh yeah, he's totally sharp and everything. And then you see this happen and him saying, him like losing track of what he's saying and just like rambling off on bullshit. And to be fair, Trump does that too, but Biden does it a lot worse. And I think that what happened is that also damaged a lot of their credibility as well. And so now you have a population that is almost certain. And really, you can't blame people for thinking that the government is cooperating with the media and the media is operating as a fourth branch of government when it seems like they're covering up lies for the previous government. And it seemed like this was happening very regularly. It's obvious. Yeah, and I think it's obvious to a lot of people. And people saw it's the emperor's clothes. It is. And I think the debate was the moment that people realized that. And when that was made clear, you saw everybody basically stop trusting the media. You don't get to eternally gaslight the citizen population. Yeah, exactly. It's already been proven. Yeah.
Millions of people's debt was literally about to get canceled. But then some of my Republican friends and elected officials and special interests sued us, and the Supreme Court blocked us. But that didn't stop us. No, I mean it sincerely. We continue to find alternatives past to reduce student debt payments.
So it's almost like they're not worried about a constitutional crisis. They're just all looking for their new hotkey phrase that fits on a bumper sticker. So
there's a lot of ways that and he's right about this, is that It's the same as like they cared about the judicial process and then Trump being tried and actually be held accountable as somebody who's important. And then Hunter Biden gets a 10-year pardon pass. I mean, I feel like it's very obvious that if this really was an issue that you had, you wouldn't have done that. It's just obviously bullshit, right?
Can all reiterate the same line at the same time to make the normies think Elon uncovering government fraud is against your best interest, when in actuality, they only seem to be protecting themselves. As watch Fox News dunk on MSNBC for blatantly misinforming their viewers.
Elon Musk has apparently...
Every president pardons people. Well, it's a very different situation with like, and I don't think that anybody, so I don't think that a lot of people really... I think that many people in Biden's position would have done the exact same thing for their son. The only issue that I think people had with it was that it was hypocritical and it went against the messaging, and also he lied. I mean, he straight up lied about it. Like if he had said that from the whole time, I don't know yet, I'm not sure yet, but he had been so outspoken about it and he had repeated it so many times that, yeah, I think people absolutely had every right to be mad about it, because it wasn't just the same as like, you know, Trump pardoning rappers, which I'm not saying that's good either, but it's also that he didn't use that against his political opponent in the same way that it was used against Trump. So you don't like lying presidents? No. And so, but here's the difference is that if you want to call Trump a liar, that's fair. But when Biden is also lying, then everybody's lying, and it's no longer a point of difference. Do you understand? So, like, you can't say that, oh, this person's lying, and now you're lying. Okay, well, now everybody's lying, so it doesn't matter. Everyone lies, they don't understand. Well, what I'm saying is lied about what, though? It means, no, I'm not going to get into, I'm not going to debate the person on the topic, because I think just the premise of the argument itself is bad. And I think that it's also about messaging. And also, I know that there's a lot of people that criticize the way that I cover these different topics. But I also want to say that I've been right about every single thing. And every single outcome I've predicted accurately. So people might get mad about the way that I've said it. Yeah, I have been. And no, you have not? Okay. Name one. Name one time that I misjudged viewer sentiment or like people's sentiment. Mm-hmm. I hope you're trolling. Me too. Me too. I'm not talking about sentiment. I'm saying you've been wrong about things before. Well, as being the most humble and the most modest streamer, I can agree with you that I have in fact been wrong about things in the past. That's true. It's accurate. That's a gotcha, ban him. Yeah, no, I have. And absolutely. But I think that in terms of like judging people's sentiment about things, I think that I'm pretty accurate. I do. And I would invite you, if you think that I'm not accurate, give me the cases that I'm not accurate in. And I actually want to see them. Because maybe if I see enough of them, then I can understand why I'm inaccurate. Do you understand what my point is? He's not going to... No, you're not getting banned. You're going to get timed out because we just want to move on. But sure, that's what I meant. No, it's okay. You're going to get timed out just so we can move on. You're not getting banned. But yeah, it's not a big deal. I can explain why you're inaccurate for USAID. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. I can. We can take one more commenter, and then we're gonna move on. Sure. Mm-hmm. 1 minute here. Okay, that's fine. We'll give it a second. But yeah. Anyway, do you have another physician? Was the fraud related to paperwork that wasn't filed correctly? And Shirley has a good example. You were wrong about the loot boxes in Overwatch 2. No. I was right. Blizzard was wrong. Blizzard were the ones who went and they did they did that to make me look bad. I was right and Blizzard made me wrong with how fucking stupid they were and how greedy they are. I was betrayed. Yeah, I wasn't wrong. I was betrayed. That's a completely different situation, okay, guys? You're wrong about Bloodborne being remastered? Well, no, that's going to be in the next state of play. Yeah, that's going to be in the next one. So I thought it was this one. Yeah, it turns out it's going to be the next one. You're going to say the executive programs, heavy audits, oversight, entire teams. What does that have to do with it? What was my... What was the... So let me ask you a question. Out of all of the instances of the different line items for USAID programs, do you think that every single one of those was in the best interest of the US? Like the, weird plays, LGBT plays in other countries. Do you think that? It's not fraud? Okay, so you're getting fixated on the word fraud. I'm not fixated on the word fraud. The word fraud doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is waste. And if it's being wasted, that's the problem. Like, whether they waste it on purpose or on accident doesn't really matter a whole lot to me. It's still getting deleted, and it's still a waste of everybody's money. Depends on our political position. Some would say advancing soft power and Western values is advancing our interests. Yeah, that's fair. And if you think that, that's okay. But I don't think that. And I actually think that trying to push Western culture into other cultures in a way that's inorganic and basically done just by ramrodding it in with money, I actually think that that's going to alienate those cultures more, and it's going to make them more distrustful of us. That's what I think is going to happen. I think it'll have a negative after effect. And I think that this whole idea of soft power is... I think that I feel like somebody like Michael Jackson had a lot more soft power than USAID. And hopefully you can see kind of what I mean by that. Is that I think that distributing American culture across the world isn't something that you can legislate and force people into doing. I think it's something that will happen naturally as America does things that are meaningful. Like the moon landing or something like that. I can see your point of view, but I mean, personally, I look at some of the examples that were used, and I don't think that they were a good use of our money. Now, if you want to look at, you literally said that Elon is finding fraud. The backpedaling you do is insane. So to me, this is what I think is actually happening. You want my honest opinion about it? I think that some of it is fraudulent in the way that it gets greenlit when it shouldn't have been greenlit because it wasn't beneficial. And I also think that there's probably fraud that's going on with money laundering as well. But it's very hard for me to say, where is the fraud occurring at? I'm not sure where it's occurring at. But when I hear citizens of the country that are receiving the aid that don't know that it's even happening, and I see people who work at these places whose net worth is going up by the millions, and then I also look at what these advances are and what these causes are, and I don't see any sort of real benefit for the country. All three of these things come together, and something doesn't seem right to me. And I can't see any answer to that isn't fraud. And I think at a certain point, a degree of mismanagement that's so extreme becomes effectively fraud. That's basically it, right? It's kind of like the idea of malicious, being malicious or being reckless. There's definitely a convergence there. That's how I'm seeing it. That's if you want my real opinion, that's what my real opinion is. In which these programs closed is not democratic, follow the actual process established in law. Well, that's totally fine, but I think that many things are downhill from democracy, right? So, like, if something is, like, and we don't live in a democracy, we live in a republic, but we do get to elect the people who represent us in that republic. And so electing people that represent us in that republic to make actions that do that, it's a second-order effect, but it's still something that we do have control over. And so, yeah, no, and hopefully you can see what my point of view is. I want to move on because, like, obviously it's like we want to watch the rest of the video. But, like, yeah, I can see what your point of view is. Hopefully you can see where I'm coming from, too.
Somehow convinced the United States government, specifically the United States Department of State, that the taxpayers of the United States of America should spend $400 million buying, quote, armored Tesla production units. Isn't it great and definitely not at all illegal or profoundly corrupt? Definitely not ripping us all off to pay themselves, right?
Donald Trump didn't give that contract to Elon Musk. Joe Biden gave it to him.
I've said this several times on...
That was a real bad one. That was a crazy... That's one of the worst ones. It doesn't get worse than that.
This channel, you'd probably be more informed if you didn't watch the mainstream media, as all they do is
if you watch the news, you're misinformed. If you don't watch the news, you're uninformed.
Represent and twist the facts to fit the narrative of what their corporate sponsors want you to think. And I used to say that in the context of them pushing certain agendas and ignoring certain facts so you take a certain medication. But now I honestly wonder if they're doing the same thing for fraud. But at least the more they struggle against Doge, the more they know they're on the right track. As look at Washington, D.C., almost entirely liberal like the politicians that are freaking out. And exactly 1 week ago, Battle Beagle was wondering what Doge would do to D.C. real estate. But as
I saw one thing that was really interesting, and I'm sure there's no correlation at all with this, but let me see if I can find it. In Washington, D.C., a lot of Google searches have started to explode for criminal defense lawyer, RICO law, Swiss bank, offshore bank, wire money, IBAN, and statute of limitations. Very interesting that that happened. I mean, I like, we are in a world of coincidences here. I don't know what to say. Let me see. Where is it? There it is. Yeah, can't that be botted? I'm sure it's all botted and it's all fake. Absolutely. Yeah, it's all of these. They're just all coincidences.
Today, it's exploding with new listings, mainly of $1 million to multi-million-dollar properties. How much bloat did Doge just expose? Because they've only started to freeze these government programs, and already all these allegedly rich people can't stay in their DC mansions anymore, which makes these political freakouts and marches in the streets make a whole lot more sense now.
Yep.
Where if you own a $3 million mansion, you should be making at least $2.3 million annually, which brings me to the final...
That's not quite accurate. I think if you have a $3 million mansion, you got to afford a down payment of 20%. That's $600,000. Average person probably be able to... I'd say like $400,000 a year. $400,000 to $600,000 a year. You know, like average to own a $3 million mansion.
Most satisfying slides as
I mean,
Google
he could
search
live in a different place. Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Trends across America for lawyer is pretty consistent throughout the year, but in DC only, it suddenly skyrocketed on nearly the exact date Donald Trump was inaugurated as president and continues to climb. I know search terms
Now, I'm sorry, but this does look like a roach out to me. It does. And maybe it's not. But man, it sure as fuck looks like it.
Don't definitively mean anything, but it seems awfully suspicious that this is exactly what Trump campaigned on. having Elon Musk head the meme government agency in Doge to expose the corruption behind where our tax dollars are actually going. Then suddenly the ultra-left DC freaks out, calls up their buddies in the media to call Elon every name in the book. Then they all possibly can't afford their $1 million mortgages anymore, and then they all have to look up their nearest lawyer. I don't know exactly what's happening, but I'm enjoying it every step of the way. So if you appreciate alliteration over my concise, lighthearted commentary on how America's finally back, hopefully I've earned your subscription, and we can chat again soon.
It's just fucking hilarious, man. It really is. And, yeah, I don't think that it's as much fraud as it is, what do you call it? As it's people that are abusing their position and taking advantage of it and misusing it. Now, you could call that fraud. And I think it's fair if you want to call that fraud. That's one way to explain it. But that's not necessarily the term that I would use. I would say it's literally, well, like, fraud is... I mean, like, we're getting into specifics here, okay? We all agree it's bad, right? So what's the word that we're going to use that says that it's bad? Oh, I don't really know, but that's up to you. You mean mismanagement. I think that it is mismanaged to such an extreme degree that it is done intentionally. I think that's what's happening.